The gun goes off before anyone in the room knows it was ever pointed at someone. 1 second the Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom is all crystal chandeliers and expensive cologne and the low hum of powerful people pretending to care about a children's literacy fund. The next second, a man named Zaire Calloway, crime boss, construction empire owner, a man who has not broken a sweat in public in 11 years, pulls a woman he has never spoken to directly against his chest and kisses her. Not soft. Not slow. The kind of move that looks romantic from 20 feet away and feels like survival from 3 inches. Hi viewers, if someone you considered your enemy stepped in front of a bullet meant for you, would you trust them, or would you still arrest them? Drop your answer in the comments right now. The bullet meant for Detective Amara Osborne, who punches through Zaire Calloway's left shoulder instead. It exits clean. It takes a piece of his navy suit jacket with it and buries itself in the drywall behind the open bar. The room shatters. Women scream. Men who built careers on being unmovable move fast toward exits. Security floods in from 3 doors at once. Someone knocks over a tower of champagne glasses and the crash cuts through everything like a second gunshot. Amara does not scream. She doesn't run. She stands with blood, his blood, warm and spreading across the shoulder of her bronze-wrapped dress, and she looks at the man now gripping the edge of the bar to stay upright, and the only thing she says is, "Why?" Not a question. A demand. 2 years of investigating this man, his shell companies, his port contracts, his perfectly laundered construction bids, and he just took a bullet for her. In public. In front of 60 witnesses. Without flinching. Zaire Calloway turns his head toward her. His jaw is tight. His eyes are sharp and completely, unnervingly calm. He presses one hand against his shoulder and says, low enough that only she can hear it over the chaos. "They weren't aiming at you because of me." She opens her mouth. He shakes his head once. Sharp. Like a period at the end of a sentence. Later. Then he lets security reach him, and he goes with them without a word, and the room shifts its attention to the blood on the marble floor, and Amara is left standing exactly where she was, wire still live inside her silver clutch, her heart doing something it has no business doing at an active crime scene. Beating for him. She kills that thought immediately. She catalogues instead. The way the shooter moved, too practiced, too fast toward the kitchen exit, no panic. The way Zaire had already been watching that corner of the room before it happened. The way his pulse, when she pressed against him for those 4 seconds, had not changed. Not once. The man had known. Before the gun moved. Before she heard anything. He had known, and he had chosen to cover her body with his own, and now he was bleeding into a hotel towel and she was standing here calculating the professional distance between gratitude and evidence. She walks to the east wall. She pulls out her phone. She calls her handler. The shooter wasn't his, she says. Silence on the line. Say that again, her handler says. The shooter was not one of Calloway's men. Wrong shoes. Wrong exit. Wrong angle for his operation. Someone else sent that bullet, and Calloway knew it was coming before I did. Another silence. Longer. Amara. That doesn't make sense. Why would he? I know, she says. She does know. That's exactly the problem. Because if Zaire Calloway saved her life tonight, not for leverage, not for cover, not for any angle she can identify, then everything she thinks she knows about him just cracked down the middle. And she doesn't know what's on the other side of that crack. Not yet. The ambulance leaves through the hotel's service entrance. Amara watches it go from the window of the manager's office where a federal agent has asked her to wait. She waits. She thinks about one thing only: the shooter moved through the kitchen exit, the same exit that Zaire Calloway's security detail should have been covering. It wasn't covered tonight. Which means either someone on his team made a mistake, or someone on his team let the shooter through on purpose. Zaire Calloway builds things. Not because he loves construction, though he does, in a quiet way that has no place in his professional reputation. He builds because it is the one industry in Chicago where a man can move money, move people, and move political will all at once, and do it through paperwork that 100 lawyers can legitimately defend. He started at 23 with a single subcontracting license and an uncle's truck. By 30, he had his first union contract. By 36, he had 3. By 40, Callaway Construction Group held stakes in 7 waterfront logistics operations, 2 city infrastructure projects, and a commercial real estate portfolio that his accountant describes as aggressively diverse. His one rule, the rule that has kept him out of federal indictment while men around him have fallen, is simple. No drugs. No poison in the neighborhoods. Not principle, at first. Strategy. The federal attention that follows a drug operation is the one variable money cannot reliably neutralize. You can manage a city councilman. You cannot manage what happens when the DEA decides a corridor matters. But the rule became something else the morning he drove through the Burnside block near his Southside logistics yard and saw what 7 months of a fentanyl pipeline running through his port had done to the street 3 blocks away. He shut the pipeline down that afternoon. What he didn't know was that the Reyes Syndicate, the organization that had run that pipeline through his infrastructure without his direct authorization, had already decided that silence was not enough. They wanted him to carry it. Permanently. Through implication, through compromised paperwork, through the kind of evidence trail that, once planted inside federal storage, becomes its own reality. The Reyes family did not operate loudly. They operated the way water moves through stone, slowly, without announcement, until the damage is already done. By October, Zaire had intercepted enough through his back channels to understand the shape of what they were building against him. They were not planning to fight him. They were planning to erase him, and through him, every asset he had quietly protected. Including, it turned out, a federal detective who had been investigating his financial operations for 2 years and had, in that time, refused every single bribe his organization had sent her way. He had not sent those bribes to test her. He had sent them because that was standard protocol for managing investigative exposure. You probe, you identify the price, you pay it. She had no price. He had catalogued that. Filed it. Found it, privately, more interesting than threatening. Then his contact called, for days before the gala, and told him the Reyes operation planned to eliminate a liability at the fundraiser. His contact said the liability was a mid-level courier who had been feeding information to federal investigators. His contact was wrong. The liability was Amara Osei-Bonsu. And by the time Zaire understood that, standing in a ballroom watching a man near the coat check adjust his position for a clean shot, he had approximately 4 seconds to make a decision that no part of his training had prepared him to make on pure instinct. He made it anyway. Afterward, bleeding in a hospital corridor with an FBI field agent sitting 3 feet away, Zaire says nothing about the detective. He says nothing about the wire she was carrying. He gives the agent the Reyes Syndicate. He gives names, dates, one logistics routing document he has kept for exactly this kind of moment. He gives them everything except her. The agent writes it all down. Zaire watches him write and thinks, the shooter got through the kitchen exit because it wasn't covered tonight. And it wasn't covered because someone inside his own security rotation made sure it was open. He does not share this thought. He needs to find that person first. And what he's already beginning to understand, the thought he keeps testing and not dismissing, is that whoever opened that door did not do it for money alone. They did it because someone inside his organization is already talking to the Reyes family directly. Which means the threat is not outside his world anymore. It is already inside it. Amara Osei-Bonsu does not sleep that night. She sits at her kitchen table in her Logan Square apartment with her case files spread across the table and a mug of tea she stopped drinking an hour ago, and she goes back through everything she has on Zaire Callaway from the beginning. 2 years. 2 years of shell company tracings, waterfront logistics audits, union financial reviews, and political donation pattern analysis. She built this case the way her grandmother used to quilt, one small piece at a time, each one aligned with precision, until the full picture emerged. And what the picture shows is a man who is controlled. Careful. Who operates at the absolute edge of what can be proven but never, not once, in 2 years, steps over it in a way she can document and make stick in court. The fentanyl pipeline had been her first real crack. When the Reyes routing showed up threaded through Callaway's port logistics structure, she had felt it, that electric stillness that comes when a case finally shows you its center of gravity. She had moved fast, filed for asset freeze authority, started building the paper chain. And then the shell company dissolved. And the routing changed. And the paper chain led nowhere because someone had surgically removed the trail before she reached it. She had cursed at her monitor for 3 solid minutes and then filed it away as a near miss and kept building. But the thing that stayed with her, the thing she could not make fit the profile of a man running a typical organized operation, was the precision of that cleanup. It didn't read like panic. It read like principle. Like someone who had found something in his infrastructure that he did not approve of, and removed it the way you remove a bad tooth. Completely. Quietly. Without leaving an infection behind. She had a rule about the stories she told herself based on incomplete evidence. She killed them before they became assumptions. She had killed that one 3 times. It kept coming back. Now she sits with his blood-dried faint on the inside of her wrist. She had washed her dress in the hotel bathroom, but not her hands until later, and the forensics of trauma are not always logical, and she pulls up a photograph of him from a 2021 City Planning Commission event. He's standing at the edge of the frame, not the center. Not posing. Watching. She had always read that as calculation. A man managing his public image with the discipline of someone who understands optics. She reads it differently tonight and doesn't want to. She closes the file. She opens a different one, the one labeled Reyes Syndicate Adjacent, which has been thin and frustrating for the 18 months she's been building it as a secondary thread. She reads for 40 minutes. Then she picks up her phone and calls her supervisor. It's 2 in the morning. He answers on the second ring, because the shooting at the Grand Meridian is not the kind of event that allows anyone inside the department to sleep. The Reyes family sent that shooter, she says. Not Callaway. And I think they've been building something against me specifically. I need you to pull the evidence management logs for my case files going back 6 months. Amara, that's a serious, I know what it is. Pull the logs. Silence. Give me until morning. I'll be in the office at 6. She hangs up. She looks at the spread of files across her table. 2 years of work. Every piece of it inside federal evidence storage, accessible to anyone with the right clearance level. Accessible to anyone the Reyes family had managed to compromise inside the system. She had been so focused on Callaway that she had not been watching who was watching her. That was the mistake she was not going to make again. She pulls her laptop toward her and starts a new document. Not in the department system. Her personal laptop. Personal encrypted cloud storage she set up on her own, completely separate from anything institutional. She starts transferring her working notes from memory, because the copies inside the system may already be touched. She works until 5:30 in the morning. She does not think about Zaire Callaway's steady heartbeat once. Almost once. When she walks into the office at 6, her supervisor is already at his desk. His face is carrying something it doesn't usually carry. He closes his office door before he speaks. Amara, he says slowly. Someone has been inside your case files. And what they left behind is going to be a very serious problem for you if we don't move fast. She does not sit down. She needs to see what they planted before she decides who she can trust with the next step. And what she is about to read is going to change the shape of this entire investigation in a way she is not prepared for. The hospital room smells like industrial cleaner and the particular stillness of a place where pain is managed but not removed. Zaire Callaway sits up in the bed with his left shoulder immobilized and his right hand wrapped around a foam cup of coffee that went cold an hour ago. The FBI field agent assigned to his case, a composed woman named Agent Terry Huang who carries the practiced patience of someone who has done this kind of interview many times, sits across from him with a yellow legal pad on her knee. She has been asking questions for 40 minutes. He has been answering them. Not because he is afraid. Because he planned to. Mr. Calloway, walk me through the moment you identified the threat. He does. Clean. Ordered. He describes the man near the coat check, the wrong shoes, the repositioning pattern, the angle of his sight line. He describes the waiter near the south corridor as secondary confirmation. He does not describe how he calculated the threat in direct relation to the woman in the bronze dress. He says only that he identified a targeting situation, moved to disrupt it, and sustained the injury in the process. You move toward the threat rather than away from it. Yes. That's not a typical civilian response. No, he agrees. It isn't. He does not elaborate. Agent Huang makes a note. The woman you were with at the time of the shooting. Can you give me her name? Zaya holds her gaze. She was an acquaintance. I don't know her well enough to give her name to federal agents without her permission. You can pull the guest list. Huang tilts her head 2 degrees. Most people want to make sure the woman standing next to them when a gun fires is identified and accounted for. She walked out of that room on her own 2 feet. She's accounted for. He says it the way you say something that is technically true and serves a purpose well beyond the words themselves. Huang hears it. He can see that she hears it. She makes another note and does not push. He gives her the Reyes Syndicate. Not everything, he holds back 2 layers of the routing documentation as insurance, because he is cooperative, not naive, but enough. Enough to open the federal case formally. Enough to justify surveillance on the 2 logistics contacts he names. Enough to redirect attention toward the people who actually sent that bullet. Huang listens. She writes. Her follow-up questions are sharp and specific and tell him, without saying it, that she knows considerably more about the Reyes operation than she has shown tonight. Good. He wants them taken down. He wants that with the clean conviction of a man who has run a careful operation for 20 years and does not appreciate someone using his infrastructure to destroy his city. When Agent Huang finally stands and collects her legal pad, she pauses at the door. One more thing, Mr. Calloway. He waits. Security footage from the kitchen corridor shows the exit was clear for approximately 4 minutes before the shooting. Your team should have had that position covered. He nods once. I'm aware. Do you have a theory about why it wasn't? He looks at the foam cup. I have several. Huang reads him for a long moment. Then she nods and leaves. Zaya sets the cold coffee down. He has 4 people on his security rotation who had access to that corridor assignment. He has worked with 3 of them for more than 6 years. The 4th is newer, brought in 8 months ago through a recommendation from a union contact. A union contact who, he is now remembering, had a professional relationship with a Reyes-adjacent logistics firm. He picks up his phone. He types a name. He sends it to 1 number only. The reply comes in 90 seconds. 3 words. Already found him. Zaya exhales slowly through his nose. Sets the phone face down. Somewhere in this hospital, in a different wing, 2 federal agents are finishing their debrief of a woman who was wearing a wire in that ballroom and is now sitting with his blood on her wrist and 2 years of case files that someone has already been inside. He knows this because protecting her tonight required understanding exactly what she was up against. What he does not know yet, what he cannot know until it reaches him 3 days from now through a source he did not expect, is that the file the Reyes family planted inside federal evidence storage does not just accuse her of corruption. It accuses her of working for him. Specifically, it accuses Detective Amara Osebonsu of being his asset inside the department. His source. His woman on the inside who has been feeding him information about federal investigations for 14 months. And it is built so carefully, layered with such precision, that even her own supervisor will have to consider whether it could be true. When Zaya finds this out, it will not be through a phone call. It will be from Amara herself, standing in a parking garage with a printed document in her hand and fury in her eyes, asking him one question. And the answer is going to determine whether they are allies or whether she walks straight into the federal building and ends both of their stories tonight. The parking garage on South Michigan is empty at 7 in the morning except for 3 cars and the low hum of the ventilation system moving cold air through concrete. Amara chose it because there are no cameras on level 2. She knows this because she has parked here for 8 months specifically for that reason. Zaire Calloway walks in from the stairwell with his left arm in a sling and his face carrying the particular stillness of a man who discharged himself from the hospital before the paperwork was finished. She does not say hello. She holds up the document. Did you plant this? He crosses the distance between them and takes it. He reads it. His expression does not shift, but something behind his eyes does, a calculation moving into something colder and harder and more focused. He reads it a second time. Then he hands it back. No. She watches him. The document claims I've been receiving payments from a consulting firm tied to your network. It has transaction records. A lease on a property I have never set foot inside. Communications from an email address I have never used. It was inserted into federal evidence storage for weeks ago by someone with system access, and it was built to look like my file, and it is going to destroy my career and everything I've built unless we figure out who did it. I know who did it, he says. She goes very still. The Reyes family has had an asset inside your department's evidence management system for approximately 8 months. His name is Donnell Whitmore. He's a contract data analyst. He was turned sometime around March with a combination of money and a threat against his sister, who has a drug possession charge that someone with Reyes access made quietly disappear. Amara stares at him. How do you know that? Because I've been tracking the Reyes operations infiltration of connected institutions for 6 months. They found my port infrastructure. Then they looked for other leverage points near it. Your investigation was adjacent. You became a target. You knew they were building a case against me. He holds her gaze. I knew they were planning to discredit an investigator who was building a case that touched my operation. I identified who the investigator was for weeks ago. I identified the specific threat 6 days before the gala. The air in the garage is cold and she feels it fully now for the first time. 6 days, she says. You knew 6 days before and you didn't come to you. Come to the department? Come to the same federal system that already had a compromised analyst inside it? With what credibility, walking in as the man you've been investigating for 2 years? She wants to argue it. She cannot. It is, infuriatingly, logical. So your solution was to take a bullet. My solution was to be present when the threat materialized and make sure you survived long enough to use the evidence I could provide. She walks 3 steps away from him and turns back. The document is still in her hand. If this file stands, I'm done. Not just off the case, done. Career over. Possibly charged. Everything I've built for 2 years turned into evidence against me. Yes. And you're the only person outside the Reyes organization who knows enough about Whitmore to dismantle it. Yes. She looks at him for a long moment. She has been a detective for 9 years. She has sat across from men who lie with the fluency of a second language and men who tell the truth so rarely it sounds like a foreign accent. She has learned, over those 9 years, to hear the difference. She hears it now. He is telling the truth. That is not the problem. The problem is what comes next. Because to clear her name, she needs what he knows. And to use what he knows, she has to decide what kind of arrangement makes that possible. Every arrangement she can currently see puts her on a razor's edge and puts him in a position where the only question is whether he chooses to use it. He has already chosen not to expose her once. In a hospital room with a federal agent at his elbow and a sentence on his tongue that would have ended her career in 30 seconds. He held it. She doesn't know what to do with that. I need time, she says. You have 72 hours before Whitmore's next access window. After that, the planted file triggers a secondary audit flag attached to your name. Once that fires, it's outside both our reach. She absorbs this. You already mapped the timeline. I plan ahead. She walks past him toward the stairwell. She stops without turning around. If I find out any piece of this is a setup, if any of what you just told me is cover for something I can't see yet, I will burn every thread of your operation to the ground and I will take my time doing it. He says nothing for a moment. Then, I know. She goes down the stairs. Zaya stands in the empty garage with his shoulder throbbing through the sling and the cold concrete air around him and pulls out his phone. He calls the one person who can access Donnell Whitmore's system logs without triggering the secondary flag, a contact inside the city's IT compliance division who has been waiting 3 years for this call. The phone rings twice. It's time, Zaya says. I need the access logs on a federal evidence account. Tonight. His contact goes quiet for 3 full seconds. You understand that if I pull those logs, the person who planted the file will know someone is looking. Yes. And you're ready for that. Zaya looks at the stairwell door where Amara disappeared. Pull the logs. He hangs up. He does not know yet that Donnell Whitmore is not working alone. The Reyes family did not place one person inside the department. They placed 2. And the second one is not a contractor. Not a low-level analyst. Not someone on the edges of Amara's professional world. The second one is someone she has trusted completely for 4 years. Someone who has sat across from her at that case file table. Someone who has reviewed every piece of evidence she has ever built. Someone who knows not just what she has on Zaya Calloway, but every move she is planning to make next. And that person is already on the phone right now, telling the Reyes family exactly what Amara said in this parking garage. Word for word. The name Donnell Whitmore is on Amara's desk by 9 in the morning, and she stares at it for a long time before she picks up the phone. Not because she doesn't believe it. Because she does. Because the moment she sees his name printed on a departmental access log with a timestamp from 3 weeks ago and a file reference that matches her own case numbers exactly, everything she thought was a coincidence rearranges itself into a pattern she should have seen months ago. Whitmore had access. He had motive, a sister whose drug case had quietly disappeared from the court calendar in April. And he had been sitting 12 feet from her evidence submissions every time she walked them through the digital filing system. 12 feet. For 8 months. She closes the access log. She opens her desk drawer. She takes out the burner phone she has kept charged and untouched since she started the Calloway investigation, because she had always known, in some part of her professional instinct that she did not say out loud, that there might come a day when she could not trust the department's lines. That day arrived without an announcement. She texts one number. 4 words, meet. Same place. Now. Zaya Calloway is already in the parking garage when she arrives. He's standing near the far wall with his sling off, his left arm moving carefully at his side, testing the range of motion the way a man does when he's deciding whether the injury will limit what he needs to do next. She does not waste time. Whitmore is confirmed. I have the access logs. He touched my files on 4 separate occasions going back to March. I can trace the planted document directly to his credentials. Good. That's not good yet. That's a data analyst with system access. To dismantle the planted file, I need to show it was fabricated, not just accessed by someone unauthorized. I need the original financial transaction data that the Reyes family used to build the fake records. The real account movements that they doctored. He looks at her. I have that. She had expected him to say he would look for it. She had not expected him to say he already had it. For how long? 11 months. I started building a parallel financial record the moment I identified the Reyes' infiltration of my port infrastructure. Every transaction they touched, I documented separately. I knew they would eventually try to use those records as a weapon against someone. I didn't know it would be you specifically. She absorbs this. 11 months. He had been building a defense before she had even identified the attack. You're going to give that documentation to federal prosecutors, she says. Not a question. I was always going to give it to someone who could use it correctly. The question was who. The word correctly lands with weight she doesn't immediately place. What does correctly mean to you? He takes a breath. The kind that means what comes next is something he has been deciding whether to say. It means the Reyes network goes down completely. Not one branch. Not a plea deal that cuts the distribution chain in half and lets the financial structure stay standing. All of it. Every port, every shell account, every legitimate business they've hollowed out and used for cover. That's a federal prosecution that will take 18 months minimum. I know. And your role in it will require you to testify to things that expose your own operation. He meets her gaze directly. I know that too. Amara looks at this man. She has spent 2 years building a case to prosecute him. He has just told her he is prepared to walk into a federal courtroom and hand her the tools to dismantle the organization that framed her, at the cost of what he has built. She needs to understand why. What do you want out of this? He is quiet for a moment. I want the Reyes family to stop running fentanyl through my city. I want the neighborhood south of my logistics yards to stop losing people to product that moved through infrastructure with my name on the contracts. And I want to stop being the man who let that happen because it was easier than the alternative. That is not the answer she expected. She had expected leverage. She had expected a transaction. Some quiet deal that let him walk while she took down the Reyes family with his fingerprints carefully removed from every document. She had not expected honesty that cost him something to say. She watches him for a long beat. 9 years of reading people. 9 years of separating the performance of honesty from the thing itself. She believes him. And that is the most dangerous thing that has happened to her since the gun went off in that ballroom. Because the moment she believes Zaire Calloway is telling the truth, she has to decide what she does with the case she spent 2 years building against him. And she has exactly 72 hours before Whitmore's access window opens and the fake audit flag on her name becomes official federal record. She has to move now. Both of them do. Together. The word together sits in the air between them like something neither of them has agreed to say out loud yet. She is still deciding whether she can afford to. The leak comes out on a Thursday morning and it moves through Chicago like fire through dry grass. By 8 a.m., 3 separate news outlets are running the same version of the same anonymous tip that Raphael Zaire Calloway, the construction magnate currently recovering from a gunshot wound sustained at a downtown charity gala, has been quietly cooperating with federal law enforcement for an undisclosed period of time. That the shooting itself may have been staged as cover for an ongoing federal operation. That the woman he was photographed protecting that night was not a random gala attendee but a federal asset embedded inside his organization. Every word of it is a fabrication. Every word of it is precise enough to be believed. Amara sees it on her phone at 7:58 while she is standing in line for coffee 2 blocks from the federal building. She reads it twice. She puts the phone in her pocket. She does not buy the coffee. She calls Zaire on the burner. He picks up on the first ring, which tells her he has already seen it. This was always their next move, he says. They're isolating you. Cutting off your political contacts before you can use them. They already have. My office has taken 11 calls this morning. 8 of them were people I've worked with for a decade finding reasons to reschedule things indefinitely. She hears something in his voice she has not heard before. Not panic. Not anger. Fatigue. The specific kind that comes from a man who has been holding a structure upright through sheer discipline and is watching pieces of it come loose faster than he can secure them. How bad is it? A port inspection that should take 2 days is now scheduled for 3 weeks out. A union contract I've been finalizing since September is being reviewed by legal. A city planning approval I've been waiting on for 14 months has been kicked back for a 3rd environmental review. None of this is illegal. All of it is the Reyes organization calling in every favor they have inside every institution they've touched. They're making an example of you before you testify. They're making sure I have no remaining reason to testify. They want me to calculate that cooperation costs more than silence. Amara steps off the sidewalk into a doorway. A man in a delivery uniform squeezes past her. She lowers her voice. Does it? A pause. No, just that. One word. Clean and without hesitation. She exhales. I need 2 things from you today. The financial documentation package you described, everything you've been holding on the Reyes transactions. And I need a name. Someone inside the Reyes operation who is close enough to their financial structure to corroborate the documentation under oath. I have both. You have a cooperating witness. I have someone who stopped cooperating with the Reyes family 14 months ago when they moved their distribution into his block. He's been sitting on what he knows because he had no reason to trust that coming forward would keep him alive. His name is Marcus Thibodeau. He ran logistics for the Reyes network in the South Corridor for 3 years. He knows every account, every routing alias, every shell company by name. Amara is already walking back toward the federal building, her mind moving faster than her feet. If Thibodeau comes forward and the financial documentation holds up against the planted file, I can have a federal warrant on Whitmore by end of day tomorrow. And then? And then you testify. Formally. On record. Under oath. And you do it without a deal that protects you from everything you've done, because I'm not going to build a case against the Reyes family on a foundation that lets you walk out clean. You understand that. The silence that follows is not short. I understand it. And I'm not asking to walk out clean. She stops walking. She stands on the sidewalk outside the federal building with people moving around her in both directions and the morning cold cutting through her coat, and she holds the phone against her ear and does not say anything for a moment. Because she has been a detective for 9 years and she has never once, not in 9 years, heard a man in Zaire Calloway's position say those words and mean them. The Reyes family made a catastrophic mistake when they tried to destroy him. They assumed he would respond the way any rational operator responds to that kind of pressure. They did not account for the possibility that pressure was exactly what he needed to stop calculating and start choosing. She goes inside. She has a warrant to build. And somewhere across the city, inside an office that Amara has no way of knowing about yet, the second Reyes plant inside her department is reading the same news story on his phone and making a phone call that is going to accelerate everything. Because the Reyes family just found out that Marcus Thibodeau is still alive. And they want him gone before he can say a single word under oath. Marcus Thibodeau is a 51-year-old man who drives a 2009 Chevy Malibu and keeps a prayer card from his mother's funeral tucked under the sun visor and has not slept more than 4 hours at a stretch since the night he decided to stop working for the Reyes family 14 months ago. He has been waiting. Not patiently. Just persistently. The way people wait when they don't have options. Zaire calls him at 10:17 on Thursday morning. Marcus picks up on the second ring. He always picks up. He has been carrying that phone like a lifeline for over a year. It's time, Zaire says. Federal prosecutor. Today. You'll be protected. You said that before. I said I would find you a reason to trust it. I found one. Silence. What changed? There's a federal detective who has been building the Reyes case independently for 2 years. She's clean. I've watched her work long enough to know that. And she has the documentation to corroborate everything you say before you say it. Another silence. Longer. If I do this and something goes wrong, I know what you're going to lose if it does. I also know what your block loses every month that operation keeps running. You told me that yourself. 14 months ago, standing outside what was left of the Hendricks boys' house. Marcus Thibodeau does not answer immediately. He looks at the prayer card under his sun visor. His mother's face. The small print of Psalm 27 along the bottom edge. What time? Noon. I'll send you an address. He hangs up. He sits in the Malibu in his driveway for 3 minutes. Then he drives. Amara is already inside the federal prosecutor's office when Zaya arrives with Marcus Thibodeau at 11:58. She has spent the last 2 hours with Assistant U.S. Attorney Renata O'Yeleran, laying out every thread of the case she has built and every piece of the Callaway documentation she intends to use to corroborate Marcus's testimony. Renata O'Yeleran is 43 years old, sharp and unhurried, and the kind of prosecutor who does not react visibly to information that surprises her. She reads the documentation Amara places in front of her without expression. She asks 7 specific follow-up questions. She writes the answers down. When Zaya walks in with Marcus, Renata stands and shakes both their hands. She looks at Zaya for a long moment. "Mr. Callaway, I understand you're prepared to provide financial documentation that directly implicates the Reyes Network's distribution infrastructure." "Yes. And you understand that in doing so, some of that documentation will also expose aspects of your own operations that fall within my jurisdiction to pursue." "Yes. And you're proceeding anyway?" "I am." Renata looks at Amara. Something passes between them that does not require words. Then they sit down and Marcus Thibodeau begins to talk. He talks for 4 hours. He names accounts. He names shell companies. He names the 3 men inside the Reyes organization who managed the port corridor routing and the 2 who managed the financial laundering structure. He describes meetings he attended, documents he signed, deliveries he authorized, and one specific night in August of the year before when a Reyes lieutenant named Devon Sparks told him that the operation was expanding into 2 new South Side blocks, and if Marcus had a problem with that, Devon had a solution for that kind of problem too. That was the night Marcus Thibodeau decided he was done. He says all of this clearly and without pause and without looking away from Renata O'Yeleran's face, because he has been holding it for 14 months and the weight of it has been pressing down on him every single day since, and it feels, unexpectedly, like putting something very heavy on the floor. By 3 in the afternoon, Renata has enough for a federal warrant on Donnell Whitmore and a preliminary injunction on the Reyes financial network. By 4:15, Whitmore is in federal custody. He does not take long to confirm what he did. He confirms it in the first 12 minutes, because Donnell Whitmore is not a hardened operator. He is a man who got in too deep and has been terrified for 8 months. The moment someone puts the access logs in front of him and tells him the planted file has been traced to his credentials, he breaks the way people break when they've been waiting for permission to stop carrying something alone. He gives them the name of the second Reyes plant inside the department. The name is Lieutenant Braxton Sellers, Amara's supervisor. The man she called at 2 in the morning when she first suspected her files had been touched. The man who told her he'd pull the evidence logs. The man who has sat across from her for 4 years and reviewed every case file she has ever submitted. She hears the name and she does not react. Not in the room. Not in front of Renata O'Yeleran and 2 federal agents who are watching her face with professional attention. She keeps her expression exactly even. But her hands, flat on the table in front of her, press down hard enough that her knuckles go pale. Because Braxton Sellers was the one person inside her department she had trusted completely. The one person she had not considered. The one person who had access to every move she planned to make before she made it. And he was in the room when she told her handler the shooter was not Callaway's man. He heard every word she said in that parking garage. Which means he has already told the Reyes family that Marcus Thibodeau is inside the federal prosecutor's office. Which means Marcus is no longer safe in this building. She is already standing when she says it. "We need to move Thibodeau. Right now." The Reyes family moves on Marcus Thibodeau at 4:47 in the afternoon. Not inside the federal building, they are reckless, but they are not suicidal. They move on the assumption that he will be transported at end of business, through the standard federal vehicle protocol, to a temporary safe house on the northwest side. They have someone watching the building's parking structure. Amara knows this because she would have done the same thing. So she doesn't use the parking structure. She moves Marcus through the building's maintenance level, out through a loading dock on the south side, into a city vehicle that is registered to a Parks Department landscaping crew. The driver is a federal marshal named Thomas Equim who has not told anyone outside of Renata O'Yeleran's office that he is on this assignment. Marcus gets in the back. He does not ask questions. He has learned, in the last 4 hours, that questions slow things down, and right now speed is the only thing keeping him breathing. They are 3 blocks from the building when Amara's phone buzzes. Zaire. The car they have on the parking structure, it's a silver Tahoe, license plate ending in 774. The driver is one of Devon Sparks's crew. There's a second vehicle 2 blocks north. How do you know that? Because I had someone watching the people who were watching the building. Take Marcus west on Harrison. Avoid Michigan Avenue. She tells Equim. He adjusts without comment. They take Marcus west on Harrison. The silver Tahoe never appears in any mirror. Marcus is in a secure federal facility by 6:10 that evening. Braxton Sellers is arrested at his desk at 5:30. He does not go quietly. He uses the word loyalty 3 times in the first 90 seconds, directed at Amara specifically, who is standing in the doorway of his office watching the federal agents process him. He says she built her career on his access. He says she would be nowhere without the doors he opened for her. He says this with the specific fury of a man who believed his own version of a story that was never true. She does not argue with any of it. She watches him go and feels something she does not immediately have a name for. Not satisfaction. Not grief. Something between them. The specific weight of 4 years of professional trust that turned out to be a room with a false wall. She goes back to her desk. She has a case to finish. The next 6 weeks are not dramatic. They are long and procedural and exhausting in the way that the real work of justice always is. There are depositions and counterfilings and one attempted bail negotiation by the Reyes family's legal team that is denied inside of 40 minutes. Devon Sparks is arrested in Cincinnati on the 3rd week. The financial injunction on the Reyes network holds. Zaire Calloway testifies before a federal grand jury on a Wednesday morning in November. He is not in handcuffs. He walked in voluntarily. He testifies for 6 hours. He does not look at Amara when he enters the room. She is seated at the far wall, technically a witness observer, technically there for professional reasons. He looks at her once when he finishes. Just once. Just for a moment. She holds it. She does not look away. He walks out. The plea agreement takes 3 weeks to negotiate. Financial crimes. Conspiracy to commit money laundering. Obstruction through third-party coercion. His attorneys argue for 5 years. The government argues for 12. Renata O'Yeleran settles at 10, with credit for cooperation, with acknowledgement in the agreement language that his testimony was given voluntarily and without immunity negotiation. Zaire accepts it. He signs it on a Tuesday morning in a conference room that smells like recycled air and old coffee. His attorney is across from him. Renata O'Yeleran is across from him. There are 2 other people in the room whose names he does not ask. He reads every word of the agreement. He takes his time. Then he signs it. Amara is in the hallway outside when he comes out. She did not plan to be there. She had told herself she was there to deliver a supplemental filing to Renata's office. She had brought the folder specifically so that there was a reason other than the real one. He stops when he sees her. They are 6 feet apart in a federal building corridor with fluorescent lighting and the sound of a printer somewhere behind the wall. There is nothing atmospheric about it. There is nothing that looks like the endings of the stories they tell about moments like this one. He says, "I didn't expect you to be here. I didn't plan to be." He nods. Just once. Something settled in his face that she recognizes from the moment in the ballroom, that quality of a man who has made a decision and is at peace with the cost of it. "No one forced you into that room that night," she says. "I know. No one forced you to testify." "I know." She pauses. "Why?" He is quiet for a moment. The printer behind the wall stops. "Because I've spent 20 years making the rational choice. I wanted to make one that wasn't. She holds that. She does not say what she is thinking, which is that irrational choices made for the right reasons are the only ones that change anything. She has seen too many rational decisions leave the world exactly as it was. She says instead, take care of yourself in there. He looks at her for a moment longer than strictly necessary. Do the same out here. He walks toward the elevator. She watches him go. She does not call after him. She does not need to. Some conversations are complete the moment they end. Zaire Calloway reports to a minimum security federal facility on a Monday in January. He does not have a farewell event. There is no gathering of people who owe him favors, no dinner, no public send-off. He drives himself to the facility in a car he has owned for 6 years. He parks it in the visitor lot because the long-term lot requires a different permit and he does not plan to be complicated about this. He carries one bag. Inside it, 3 books, a legal pad, 2 pens, and a photograph of his mother standing in front of the first Calloway construction project that bore her son's name on the contract. He does not look back when he walks through the entrance. The Reyes network is formally dismantled over the following 8 months. Devon Sparks receives 22 years. The financial architects of the distribution chain receive sentences ranging from 9 to 16 years. Donnell Whitmore cooperates fully and receives a reduced sentence of 4 years. Braxton Sellers, who had 13 years on the department and a pension 3 years from vesting, receives 11 years and loses everything attached to the conviction. Amara testifies at 3 of the trials. She is precise. Unemotional on the surface. Completely prepared. After the third, Renata O'Yelleran meets her in the courthouse lobby and says, simply, "You built a good case, detective." "I had help." "Unusual help." "Yes." Renata looks at her for a moment. Then, the commendation recommendation is already filed. You'll hear about it through official channels. Amara thanks her. She means it. She takes the long way back to her car. 3 years pass the way time passes when the work is steady and purposeful. Cases come. Cases close. Some break clean, some don't. She makes lieutenant. She does not make a speech at the ceremony. She accepts the promotion, shakes the necessary hands, and goes back to work. She does not think about Zaire Calloway often. She thinks about him sometimes. She thinks about him the way you think about a thing that changed the shape of how you see something, long after the thing itself is gone. The way a conversation you had once with someone you'll never see again still surfaces at unexpected moments and reminds you of something you almost forgot you believed. She does not visit. She does not write. She does not send anything through his attorneys. There is no version of contact that would be appropriate, and she is a woman who lives by the version of things that is appropriate. It is not rigidity. It is how she keeps herself honest. For years after the sentencing, she is in the South Side on a financial fraud case that has nothing to do with organized crime, a school district administrator who has been skimming from the lunch program fund for 6 years. Small case, in the scale of things. Meaningful, in the way that all of it is meaningful when you remember who it costs. She takes a wrong turn off Western Avenue. She does not immediately know why the block looks different. Then she does. There is a community center on the corner where there used to be a logistics warehouse. New construction. Clean lines. Large windows that let in actual light. A mural across the east exterior wall, commissioned, she can tell, because it is the work of someone who was paid to do it well. Children in the colors of the neighborhood. Buildings that look like possibility instead of concrete. There is a sign near the entrance. Calloway Reyes Forfeiture Fund. Community Reinvestment Project. Administered by the Cook County Community Development Trust. She parks. She gets out. She reads it again. The forfeited assets from the Reyes prosecution, the warehouses, the shell account balances, the logistics properties, had been directed into a community fund as part of the sentencing agreement. She had known that. She had read it in the court documents. She had not known this specific building existed. She walks to the entrance. Through the glass doors she can see a room full of middle school students at long tables, working. A woman at the front of the room writing on a whiteboard. Backpacks on every chair. There is a small plaque on the wall to the right of the doors. She reads it. This facility was made possible through the generosity of an anonymous donor who requested no public recognition. For the neighborhood. For what it has always deserved to be. No name. No monument. No photograph. No brass letters spelling out a legacy. Just the thing itself. Standing on a block that used to funnel poison through it. Replaced now with something that feeds the future instead of ending it. She stands on the sidewalk in the October air and she does not wipe her eyes because there is nothing to wipe. She is not that kind of woman and this is not that kind of moment. It is something quieter than that. It is the feeling of watching a person you could not fully see, finally, from enough distance to understand the whole picture. She thinks about what he said on the courthouse steps when the reporters asked him why. Some debts aren't paid with money. She thinks about a man who built 20 years of power through patience and leverage and control. A man who, in the last years before the walls closed in, made a different kind of choice. Not a soft choice. Not an easy one. The hardest kind, the kind that costs you everything you built and gives something to people who will never know your name. Power isn't proven by domination. It's proven by restraint. She looks at the building one more time. She looks at the children at those long tables through the glass. Then she gets back in her car. She has a case to close. She has always had a case to close. Some things don't end. They just change what they're building toward. And some debts are paid not with money, not with time, not with anything you can put a name on. They are paid in the slow, quiet work of becoming the person you should have been all along. And that is where we leave Amara Osei-Bonsu. Standing on a sidewalk in October, watching children learn inside a building that used to carry poison, built with the forfeited money of the people she helped bring down, and funded in part by the quiet, anonymous hand of a man serving 10 years for the choices he made before he made the one that mattered most. That's what moral transformation looks like in the real world. Not a headline. Not a parade. Just a plaque with no name and a room full of kids who have no idea what it cost. If this story moved you, if you found yourself choosing a side, questioning your assumptions, or feeling something shift inside you when Zaire walked into that federal building on his own terms, then this channel is exactly where you belong. Subscribe right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Because every week we bring you narratives like this one, stories about power, principle, the impossible choices that define who we really are, and the people who chose differently when it counted. And before you go, we want to hear from you in the comments. What was the moment in this story that changed how you saw Zaire Calloway? Was it the kiss? The hospital silence? The day he walked voluntarily into the federal building? Or was it the plaque with no name? Tell us in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Your words in that comment section don't just tell us what you think, they inspire someone else who is watching quietly, trying to figure out what it means to do the right thing when it costs something real. We'll see you in the next story.